Hi, and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around, I've got a dozen movies I'm going to recommend to you. They're not big budget films. They're not A films. They're not enormous films. They're little films from the edges. And I really enjoy those kind of movies. At times, much more than I do the big movies that hit really well. The Deadpool and Wolverines, all that kind of stuff. And I thought it'd be a good idea to put together a dozen of those from the shelves and just discuss them and recommend them. If I can find them on Amazon, I'll post Amazon links if you want to buy them. You don't have to, but it does give the channel a little bit of a bump if you do. We'll get started with a very weird comedy from 1991. The first movie directed by one of the directors, I think is one of the great indie directors of this century. And that person is Bobcat Goldthwait, and it is Shakes the Clown.
Mom, who's the naked clown in our bathroom?
What's your name?
Shakes. Shakes the Clown. Oh, my head!
Shakes the Clown is mad fun. It's transgressive, it's silly, it's set in a universe where clowns are an ethnic group in a sense. And they do things like they beat up mimes because mimes are lesser creatures, which has certain parallels with some very unsavory things in real world society. And it's about a Shakes who's an alcoholic clown who's not doing very well at all in the business of being a clown. And he has a girlfriend played by Julie Brown, and he has a friend called Binky, who is an evil bastard. It's basically a redemption arc for Shakes as he gets his life together and as he defeats Binky, who is determined to undermine him at every single turn. This one, apart from Julie Brown and Bobcat Goldthwait, it stars Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, as Binky. And Tom Kenny and Bobcat Goldthwait did a comedy tour together just after this movie came out, and I saw it. One of the best stand-up comedy sets I ever saw in my life. And that's another reason why I find this movie so really great fun. It also has a cameo by Robin Williams playing a mime, which is really kind of interesting. It's a little hard to find this one around here in Australia. I found this one secondhand. But if you look around, you'll be able to find a copy of it if you're lucky. It is very much a midnight cult movie kind of film from the 1990s when those things were really big. And I like it. Unashamedly, I like it. And I enjoy it. And I recommend it. So I'm going to be jumping genres here a lot, so just bear with me on that. This one's from 2016. And one genre that never fails to hit is Indonesian martial arts films. This was one that came after The Raid and The Raid Redemption. But it stars Iko Uwais, Chelsea Islan, Julia Stell. Headshot. Smaller budget Indonesian independent martial arts film where Iko Uwais plays a guy who is shot in the head and gets amnesia because of it. And as he gets his memory back, he goes on a rampage to defeat the people he needs to defeat because that's the arc of the movie. These ones are fantastic fun for me because I really want to encourage people to enjoy films from countries that don't normally hit in world cinema. And Indonesia has locked in a little subgenre of incredibly vivid martial arts and action films and crime films. These ones do really well with me. And you can find them around if you look fairly cheaply. Some of them are subtitled, some of them are dubbed. I don't recommend the dubs because the dubbing is never fantastically good on these. But there's the back cover just to show you the kind of stuff in there. I just love these films and I can eat them like popcorn. And Headshot's a pretty good example of it. It's probably a good one to start with if you don't want to dive into buying the 4K of Raid that Umbrella Entertainment have put out. You might want to go with something like Headshot to just get a taste of it, see what you like, and enjoy the really incredible stunt work that Indonesian martial arts stunt people do for these kinds of movies. Like I said, I'm jumping genres a lot. Next up, let's go back to 1928 and a movie that influenced spy movies ever since this movie came out in 1928. You can see the groundwork for James Bond films and other spy movies in Fritz Lang's Spione. Made for UFA Films, it's based on a script by Thea von Harbu, who was Fritz Lang's wife. And it's got car chases, it's got weaponry, it's got supervillains, it's got everything that we know and love from over-the-top James Bond-style spy movies. But it's in 1928, It's a silent film, but this is the granddaddy of spy movies. And like the Dr. Mabuse films that Fritz Lang did, this is the ones that from which everybody else borrowed. And it's great to go back to original sources in any genre you care to name. You're not going to be disappointed by a movie like this. I'll show you the back, even though there's not a lot. This is a Taiwanese release with English interstitial cards on it. And occasionally I find really interesting things that don't get as English language releases in Australia come out from Taiwan and other small countries. And Spione is definitely one you want to have. I like it a lot. I recommend it a lot. I don't know whether it's ever got a Criterion release or anything like that, but whichever copy of this you can find, you're going to want to have it if you're at all interested in spy movies. That's the granddaddy. Next up, we've got a couple of movies that were released by a company which found a kind of loophole in copyright law in the 1970s and 1980s and started releasing weird editions of obscure cult films and B-movies and grindhouse films. And that's Something Weird Video, which has now gone completely to digital, I believe. But I've got two Something Weird releases. They were a little hard to find here, even back in VHS days where they started. But this one is definitely a 1960s grindhouse film. Satan in High Heels, starring Meg Miles, Grayson Hall. It's about a woman who is working as a waitress, and she basically decides to social climb. She finds a rich boyfriend. She starts working in a nightclub run by a lesbian, because lesbians were really transgressive in those days. Meg Miles herself was a singer and actress. I've got an album of hers here somewhere, and if I can find a copy of the album cover, I'll post it up here. This is like black and white, low budget, really kind of sleazy 1960s stuff. Doesn't have any significant nudity in it, but it has subject matter that was very edgy for the early 1960s before things broke down in the late 60s and more adult visual material was available. But I like Satan in High Heels because it's just got a certain 60s grindhouse sleaze about it, and it is a bit of fun. There's the back cover, and I'll put that where you can best see it. And there's a ton of special features, including a whole bunch of short films and other bits of ephemera, which is something that Something Weird did a lot in its releases. I just like this kind of grindhouse sleazy stuff. That's a great title too, Satan in High Heels. It's like Kitten with a Whip, the Anne Margaret movie. It's got that kind of a feel about it. Then we get into a genre which I know a lot of people have a lot of fondness for, and it's a Doris Wishman movie called Diary of a Nudist from 1961. One of those films that were filmed in nudist camps. It's the story of a female journalist who gets sent by her sleazy boss to unveil the sleaziness and nastiness of nudist camps. And it's just an excuse to get a whole bunch of pretty women unclad, using a censorship loophole in the 1950s and 1960s that America had, where nudist films were able to be made and released as long as they extolled the healthy virtues of getting skyclad in Florida. So we've got that. There's an extra film there called Edward G. Ulmer's The Naked Venus by Edward G. Ulmer. And again, there are lots and lots of extras on this. Over an hour of special features, it says on the back. And fortunately, the cover doesn't have anything I can't put onto YouTube. But you might want to freeze that if you want to take a look at the extras. Something Weird Video just preserved a lot of these weird fringe films. And I'm really glad that they did. They're a lot of fun to watch. Not really great, but they're still really entertaining. And there's that one, Diary of a Nudist, The Naked Venus. And for me, movies like that show us the parts of history that are left unspoken of. People talk about the politics and then the social progress and the mainstream media, but very few people talk about these fringe media things that were very popular, but also not spoken of in polite society. I'll get on to the last of the sleazy things. This one was released by 88 Films. It's by Harry Hurwitz. It's a 1978 adult fairy tales, which I like the tagline of that, "Someday your prince will come," which Disney probably doesn't like them using. Is there anything on the back I can't show you? Quick look at the back.
It's not a science fiction movie. It's not a rock musical. Neither is it a detective story or a country western.
But yeah, this is basically an adult fairy tale where there's Mother Goose, there's Snow White, there's Old King Cole, Little Tommy Tucker, Bo Peep, and all of those characters done as a soft adult film. There are some special features. HD restoration of original camera negative, which is kind of hard to find for these films. It's in widescreen. It's got an audio commentary by writer Frank Ray Perilli and also the producer Charles Band. So this is a Charles Band produced movie. But these ones are a bit of fun. They did really well in VHS days. I kind of like that moment in history where people did adult films, but did them in a way where there were stories and characters and songs and jokes and all sorts of things like that. It's an interesting little time in history, and I'm glad that they have been able to preserve a number of these films and release them for people to enjoy. Everybody knows about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the Terry Gilliam movie with Johnny Depp playing Hunter S. Thompson. But there was an earlier Hunter S. Thompson movie about the relationship between Hunter S. Thompson and his lawyer, Oscar Acosta. And this one from around 1980. And the only copy of this I could find was in 1.33 to 1 aspect ratio, which is a little bit of a shame. But it's got Bill Murray playing Hunter S. Thompson and Pete Boyle playing his lawyer, Oscar Acosta. Where the buffalo roam.
Deep within the snow-shrouded Rockies, a fearsome creature is now awake.
This one came out in, I think, the Valhalla Cinema in Sydney as a midnight movie. And it is a weird little movie about the life of Hunter S. Thompson, which came out before Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's not as good as Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in some ways, but it is still an interesting artifact of the life of Hunter S. Thompson, whose writing, particularly on politics, was singularly transgressive and brilliant. There's Peter Boyle on the back playing the lawyer. There's Bill Murray. This is like young Bill Murray, not old Bill Murray. Also stars Bruno Kirby and Rene Auberjonois. Got some really good music in there. You've got Neil Young, Creedence Clearwater Revival, The Temptations, The Pointer Sisters, and Hendrix. So they really landed with the music. This one probably hasn't been re-released because they may have had music rights issues, because you always have to renegotiate the music rights when you re-release something like this. It's an interesting artifact of the counterculture and re-evaluating the counterculture 15 years later. If you can find a copy of that, you're going to have a good time with it. So I'll go a little mainstream with the next one. I've talked about this movie before. Directed by Stanley Tucci and Campbell Scott, so the Tucci's involved. This is one of the best food-based movies ever made.
To eat good food is to be close to God. I'm never sure what that means, but it's true anyway.
It's from 1996. It also stars Tony Shalhoub, many drivers in there, Ian Holm, Isabella Rossellini. Big night. About a pair of brothers who run a small Italian restaurant in New Jersey in the 1950s, and they want to hit it big. And a bigger restaurateur, played by Ian Holm, makes them a promise he doesn't want to keep because he wants them to work for him. So they have a big night where they're going to get a celebrity to come in and try their food, and it may hit for them, but it doesn't quite go that way. Beautiful evocation of time and place on this one. Really great cast. The cast is singularly good. Just a kind of heartwarming family film. A nice little drama. Beautifully shot and directed with a fantastic ending scene. You can't watch this movie and not salivate. Fantastic film. Heartwarming, touching, incredibly underrated. Umbrella put this out. It's a Region B copy of it. Big Night is one of those movies that deserves to be better known than it is, which is why it's in this list. Still a very diverse range of movies for this one. Kind of blaxploitation counterculture movie directed by Ivan Dixon, who was the token black guy in Hogan's Heroes back in the day, but later became a fine director. It stars Lawrence Cook, Jack Aaron, Don Blakely, Paul Butler, Paula Kelly, and it's about a black guy who is recruited by the CIA in the 1970s to be a token black guy in the CIA. It's the spook who sat by the door. It says this film transcends the action genre, which it does, but it's also an action film. And so basically he's there to sit by the door so they can say that the CIA has black representation. But what the CIA doesn't know is that this guy has his own agenda. It's a really transgressive movie. It's confronting to some people. I just love it. I think it's one of those films that has a voice, has a political viewpoint. Yeah, it doesn't sit comfortably with wide audiences, which I don't mind at all. I like movies that make me uncomfortable in a good way. If you haven't seen that one, you should really check it out. If you're into 1970s transgressive cinema, particularly what's known as blaxploitation movies, this has got to be on your list along with Shaft, The Mac, Superfly and all the other ones, and Dolomite. This one's much more political than any of them. If I was going to compare it to another movie, it'd be Jules Dassin's Uptight. It's that kind of a film, and it's really, really good. Got token Australian film in here. From 1970, it's about an aspiring young designer who's drawn into the hedonistic world of Sydney's upper-class society. The Set.
The Set, a shameless Australian explosion, laying bare Sydney's jet set, with the accent on the spoon-fed generation growing up.
Which is in black and white. It was a very confrontational movie when it first came out here in Australia. Can I show you the back of it? Yeah, it is about a young man who gets involved with the arty side of Sydney high society in 1970. Oddly enough, and I love this, it was written by none other than Roger Ward. Yeah, the guy who played Fifi in Mad Max wrote this movie. It's got all sorts of things. It's got nudity, it's got adultery, it's got bisexuality in a positive way. It's got drag queens and flamboyant gays at a time when those things were very, very confrontational. It's a 2-disc set, this one, with a ton of extras on it and a magazine as well, which I can't show you. Apart from the world premiere for the movie in Melbourne, even though the movie itself is set in Sydney. I love the fact this has been released and preserved. It's an odyssey in Australian cinema history. And it sits just before we had that exploitation explosion in the 1970s of exploitation. But I recommend this set. Great film, rough around the edges, but it really went for it and didn't shy away from showing the less savoury aspects of life, let's say. But I'm glad I got that. And if you look around, you can also find the original novel by Roger Ward, which is about that thick. It was re-released a number of years ago. 2 foreign language films now, and then an English crime drama. This is a double box set of French films, but I'm only going to talk about the first one. And both of these movies are directed by Philippe de Broca from the 1960s. But the one you need to check out here is L'Homme de Rio, that Man from Rio. With Jean-Paul Belmondo and Francois Dorliac. A lot of action scenes in this were directly stolen by Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's about an Air Force guy played by Jean-Paul Belmondo, whose girlfriend who works for a museum, played by Francois Dorliac, the sister of Catherine Deneuve, gets kidnapped and taken to Rio. He basically social engineers his way onto the plane and follows her to rescue his girlfriend. It's got fantastic action sequences both in France and in Rio. Totally over-the-top action stuff. This, in 1964 when it came out, had action scenes that no James Bond movie up to this time could even go close to. Great film, fantastic music, great locations, great use of construction sites, amongst other things. Construction sites are great for action films. But if you haven't seen That Man from Rio, you should check it out. It's a lot of fun. Up to His Ears is another one of the Philippe de Broca movies. It's a lesser film, but L'Homme de Rio, you should check out. Action over the top. And Belmondo did his own stunts in this one, some of which are scrotum-tighteningly tense. You should check that out. Now, when we talk about Ingmar Bergman movies, nobody talks about the comedy. And this is my favourite Bergman comedy. In fact, it's my favourite Bergman film. Smiles on a Summer Night. It's about a middle-aged lawyer with a young wife. It's his second wife. He's got a young son as well. And he's wandering through town and finds out that one of his ex-girlfriends, a famous actress, is in a play in his town. And this leads to a whole bunch of romantic complications on the longest day of the year when the sun doesn't quite set in the part of Sweden they live in. It's like a French farce. It's like La Ronde. It's like a dance of foolish people. It was made into a play, a musical by Stephen Sondheim called A Little Night Music. But this original one is just such whimsical fun, beautifully shot, touching. A lot of the characters are absurd. A lot of the characters attain wisdom on this one night. I just love it. It's delightful. It's charming. If I was going to compare it to another movie, it'd probably be Carnival in Flanders, the 1935 movie, which, even though it is set in the Middle Ages, has a lot of the same feel of this kind of film. It's charming, wonderful fun. I got this for $5 at JB Hi-Fi back in the day, and I've loved it ever since I first saw it. Yeah, it's not the usual kind of stuff I watch or the usual kind of stuff I like, but it won me over, and I just love it unashamedly. The last one I like because it's a non-typical role for somebody who's known mostly as a comedian. This is the 1960 crime drama starring Richard Todd, Elizabeth Sellers, and Peter Sellers, Never Let Go.
Not on the face, Cliff. Use your low.
And in this one, Richard Todd plays a guy who's heading towards middle age. He's a salesman. He needs his car to do selling things. He's selling women's makeup and stuff like that. And his car gets stolen by a guy working for a really nasty criminal gang leader, played by Peter Sellers. The character played by Richard Todd, he was in the war. He was decorated in the war. But since the war ended, in the 15 years since the war ended, his life hasn't particularly gone the way he wants to. He's an angry man. He's frustrated. He thinks he deserves better from life than he gets. And he goes on this quest to get his car back. And that brings him up against the criminal called Lionel, played by Peter Sellers, who is really, really nasty. He's sexually violent to women. He's violent to men. He is a ruthless, total bastard in this movie. And Peter Sellers, using a northern accent, is creepy as hell in this film. There's the back of it. You may see a little bit. I'll try to find some more pictures of Peter Sellers for this one. But this shows the road not taken in Peter Sellers' career, where he would have been a really good, heavy character actor had he not had the opportunity to do a number of comedies. Had he not been in Lolita, had he not been in The Pink Panther and A Shot in the Dark and all those things that moved his career successfully into other realms, he would have been a solid, heavy in his career, in his film as well. But Never Let Go, you should check out if you can find a copy of it. Nice hidden gem crime drama, which I really recommend. It will open your eyes toward the acting skills of Peter Sellers and show you a Peter Sellers you've never seen before. So that's it. There's the 12 I've got for you. Like I said, all over the world as far as genres are concerned, and international as well. But rock solid films, they're all worth checking out. They're not going to be the best film of the year for you, but they're going to be solidly entertaining. And they're going to be movies, for the most part, that you're going to recommend to others when you see them. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can support the channel by donating to the channel or by becoming a channel member or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/cherrytalksmovies. Next up, we've got Science Fiction Saturday, and I'm doing This Island Earth and It Came From Outer Space as a double feature, and I'm going to deep dive into them. So until then, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some small movies that you're going to take a chance on and you haven't really heard about, because sometimes they work for you and you will remember the movies forever. So check all these ones out, and I'll catch you next time.